The engine hum presses through the deck before anything else. His knees drop and stay there. Cold paint seeps through the fabric, gritty with sand that sticks when he shifts. The craft tilts and the weight of the men slides with it. His palms move along the floor until they find a seam. Fingers hook into it. A boot skids a few inches and stops against another boot. He spreads his knees wider, adjusting without lifting them. He notices how hard he is holding himself. Muscles lock early, as if bracing for a fall that hasn't come yet. The ceiling hangs low, close enough that rising would mean touching someone. He keeps his head down and narrows his attention. Balance becomes work. The sound of the engine stays steady, indifferent. The boat rocks again. He tightens his grip on the seam and watches his hands, waiting for the next shift to come. The engine fills the space, a thick, steady sound that vibrates through his teeth. Inside it, something thinner appears. It doesn't arrive all at once. It stretches into the noise like a wire being pulled tight. He lifts his head a fraction, then stops. Around him, other heads angle the same way without anyone speaking. An arm shifts. A shoulder presses against his and stays there. The sound rises and keeps rising. It doesn't break or settle. He tries to place it somewhere ahead or above and can't. His jaw tightens until his teeth touch. He realizes he hasn't blinked in a while and forces his eyes to close once, then open. The air smells of exhaust and damp metal. He holds it without meaning to. The craft keeps rocking, unchanged. The engine doesn't react. That steadiness makes the thin sound feel closer than it should. He stays still, listening for what comes next. The thin sound ends nearby with a hard strike. Metal rings and the vibration runs through the hull. He drops fully to the deck, sheet pressed into cold paint. Grit touches his lips. Boots scrape and thud around him as other bodies go down. Someone's hand pushes against his shoulder for balance, then slips away. For a moment he is nothing but weight pinned to a moving floor, breath caught halfway in. The sentence forms without effort. It does not rush. It does not argue. The enemy fights back. His chest tightens as if a strap has been pulled across it. Air moves in short pulls now. His arms tremble where they are folded under him, not from motion but from holding still. The craft rocks again. The deck stays cold against his face. He keeps his eyes on the paint inches from his nose and lets the thoughts sit there with him. He is afraid to die. His elbows draw in toward his ribs without instruction. Shoulders rise and stay there, tightening the space around his neck. The fabric at his sleeves pulls and holds as his arms lock closer to his body. He does not decide to do it. He notices it only after the position is already set. The space inside the craft feels reduced. A shift that would have been easy before now requires planning. He adjusts an inch at a time, careful not to loosen what little balance he has. Muscles stay engaged even when he stops moving. The vibration of the engine runs straight through that tension and keeps it alive. He becomes aware of how narrow he has made himself. It feels safer this way, though he cannot explain why. The boat rocks again, and he holds the compact shape, waiting for the movement to pass. He draws in a short breath and lets it out the same way. The air sits heavy in his throat, thick with oil and salt. Vapor hangs in the space between bodies, shifting when the craft rocks. He swallows once, then again, and feels the tightness stay. His chest rises a little and stops. It drops less than that. He tries to settle into a pattern without counting. In through the nose, out through the mouth. The effort pulls at his neck and jaw. A faint lightness gathers behind his eyes when he waits too long between breaths. He corrects it by breathing again, smaller this time. The engine keeps its pace. The boat rolls and his breathing rolls with it, shortened to match the motion. He keeps his shoulders lifted and his mouth closed, taking what air he can and holding it close, preparing for the next rise and fall. The cold under his torso does not ease. It spreads slowly through the fabric and settles against his ribs. The engine keeps the same pitch, the same pull, as if nothing has shifted. He stays down, cheek turned slightly, eyes level with the floor. The edges of helmets drift in and out of his view as the craft rocks. The thought does not come with force. It arrives whole. He does not push it away or argue with it. He lets it sit where it lands. He does not want to die. The statement does not hurry. It takes up space and stays there. His stomach feels hollow, as if something has been removed and not replaced. His arms tremble where they support him, weak from holding still too long. The boat rolls again. He adjusts his forearm against the deck, feeling the paint and grit scrape his sleeve. The engine continues without change. He keeps his body low and his breathing short, carrying the thought with him as the motion goes on. Sweat gathers at the small of his back and along his thighs where the fabric presses tight. It has nowhere to go. The low ceiling hangs close above him, a bead of moisture forming and falling somewhere out of sight. The engine keeps running at the same pace, neither faster nor slower. Forward motion feels paused, as if the craft is held in place by the sound alone. He cannot tell how long he has been in this position. The idea of minutes slips when he tries to grasp it. Waiting settles into his legs and stays there, a dull weight that makes them feel heavy and far away. When he shifts his knee, the movement arrives late, stiff, and brings a faint ache with it. He stops moving to keep the feeling from spreading. The question comes without shape. How long? It does not find an answer. The boat rocks again, gentle and persistent, and he lets the motion carry him, holding still as the engine continues on. A thin ringing settles in his ears and stays there, as if the sound has left a mark. The engine noise becomes one solid block. When an impact comes, it lands as a pulse through the hull and then disappears into the same blanket of vibration. The next pulse arrives and feels identical. He waits for a difference and doesn't find one. He turns his head slightly toward the front. The ramp is only a shadowed plane, a dark shape that doesn't explain anything. The repeated jolts do not build into meaning. They only repeat. Each one makes the pressure in his head thicken, as if the bones around his ears are tightening. He works his jaw once, then stops because it feels tired, like it has been clenched for too long. Again. The thought returns with the next pulse. He presses his palm harder into the deck seam, feeling the grit bite into the skin, and stays low as the sounds continue to flatten into the same hard rhythm. The tremor in the hull runs up through his forearms and settles there. They have gone numb where they press into the deck, the skin thick and distant. He tries to hold his weight the way he did before and feels the effort fail halfway through. The muscles answer late, then soften without permission. His elbows slide outward a fraction and stop. Boots move past him, close enough that he feels the air shift. One heel passes inches from his hand. He does not pull away. He does not lift himself. The choice does not present itself. His body stays where it is settled, spread more than before, heavier against the floor. The low vibration continues, steady and low, making the weakness feel permanent. He notices the change without alarm. There is no surge to correct it. His arms tremble once and then grow still. The strength he expected to call on does not return. He accepts the new position because it is the only one left to him, and lets the motion carry him there as the craft keeps moving. Fabric brushes against his cheek as someone shifts past. He lifts his eyes and sees legs stepping, knees bending, boots finding space where there was none. He does not look up far enough to find faces. The movement comes in pieces, calves, hems, the backs of boots, each part sliding into the next. The lines they form break and reform as the craft rocks. The motion pulls his attention forward, then drops it. His eyes burn and water slightly, and he blinks to clear them. The effort shortens what he can hold in view. He stops trying to make sense of who is who. The men become direction rather than people, a flow he can align himself with if needed. The boat tilts and the rows shift again. He stays low, watching the movement pass over him, taking his cue from it without lifting his head, ready to move when the pattern moves him. His hand moves to the strap at his chest and tightens it a notch. He doesn't remember deciding to do it. The metal buckle is cold against his fingers, slick where spray has settled. The craft rocks and his grip adjusts on its own, thumb bracing, fingers pulling, then releasing. Another strap is checked the same way, a quick tug that stops when it feels right. He watches the movements as if they belong to someone else. The fingers feel stiff, slower than usual, but they keep working. Each motion finishes before the thought catches up. He notices the delay and lets it pass. Thinking about it would only slow things further. The steady sway of the boat keeps the hands busy. They rest for a moment, then return to the same place, touching the same metal, confirming the same hold. He stays low, eyes following his own knuckles as they move, and allows the routine to continue without interference. The straps across his chest pull tight as the craft shifts, and his shoulders follow the pressure without pause. He adjusts his stance a few inches, knees widening, weight settling lower. The vibration runs through him in a steady line from the deck up into his ribs. Around him, men draw into rough alignment, bodies angling the same way as if guided by the motion itself. He notices the change after it has happened. He is not asking what comes next. He is responding to it. The body answers first, setting position, finding balance, holding. The weight on his torso feels accepted rather than resisted. There is no urge to question the movement or the reason for it. The thought arrives late and stops short. The engine keeps its pace. The deck hums under his forearms. He tightens one strap again because it feels necessary, not because he planned it. The posture holds. He stays where he is, carried by the same routine, letting the vibration decide what happens next. The engine churns on, thick and even, but the high note does not leave. It lingers behind his hearing, a narrow shape pressed into the noise. His teeth buzz faintly when he clenches them. He lifts his head a few inches, neck tightening, then lowers it again when the strain pulls too hard. The pressure behind his ears stays. Helmets sit close together above him, their edges nearly touching. Bench legs frame a narrow view of scuffed deck paint. He opens his mouth once, as if to say something, then closes it without sound. The motion feels unnecessary. He swallows and feels the ring remain. The air carries the engine smell and something sharper underneath it. He waits for the sound to return, focusing on the space where it should arrive. Distant impacts come and go, but he measures each one against that thin note. His neck stays locked from holding still too long. He listens as if attention alone could hold the sound away, keeping his head down while the motor continues. He draws a breath and tastes exhaust at the back of his tongue. Oil sits over the salt, heavy and dull. Damp canvas brushes his lips when the craft rocks, leaving a faint grit behind. He turns his face a few degrees to the side, testing the air, then stops when it changes nothing. The smell follows him. The engine pushes the air in short pulses that match the motion under his knees. He swallows and feels the movement scrape his throat. He swallows again, slower, as if clearing something lodged there, and finds only the same dryness waiting. His tongue feels thick. He keeps his jaw closed and lets the breath come shallow, careful not to pull in more than he needs. The habit begins without planning. The boat rolls and the air shifts with it. Moisture beads on the metal nearby and runs in a thin line. He keeps his head angled where it is, breathing small and contained, letting the smell pass through him while he waits for the next change to arrive. The next impact reaches him through the deck before it reaches his ears. The hull jumps and settles, a blunt jolt that drives up his forearm. His arm presses harder into the paint without asking him first. Grit grinds into his sleeve. The engine falters for a fraction and then resumes its dull pull, as if correcting itself. The sentence returns whole. It doesn't arrive with heat or rush. The enemy fights back. He doesn't react to it the way he did before. There is no spike, no scramble to push it away. The thought settles in his chest and stays there, heavy and unmoving. His stomach feels hollowed, as if the space has been cleared and left open. Boots brace near his head. Hands clamp onto metal edges. The ramp ahead holds its shape in shadow. His body stops shaking and grows still instead, muscles held tight and quiet. The fear does not sharpen. It evens out and becomes constant. The craft continues forward. The motor fills the space again. He keeps his forearm planted where it is and lets the weight remain, waiting for what follows. His thigh tightens without warning, a hard pull that locks the muscle in place. He shifts his knee a fraction and stops when a sharp line of pain answers back. The fabric over his leg is damp and sticks as he presses his palm into it, fingers digging as if pressure might persuade the muscle to ease. It does not. The craft rocks and the cramp holds through each tilt, turning the motion into a steady pulse of discomfort. He adjusts his weight carefully, inch by inch, until the knee finds a position it can tolerate. A boot pins it from one side. A bench leg sits inches from the other. The space decides for him. He keeps his hand on his thigh, feeling the muscles stay hard beneath the cloth. Balance feels thinner now. He stops trying to correct it and lets the new posture settle, holding still and waiting for the next movement to come. He thinks grip, and the hand comes a moment later. Fingers close on the metal edge, then open again, clumsy, as if they missed the signal the first time. The buckle at his chest is cold and slick. He tries to pull the strap through and drops it, the wet fiber sliding back against his knuckles. He stills his hand and tries again, slower. The vibration from the engine runs through his wrists and makes the small work harder. His fingertips feel distant, as if wrapped. He notices the delay and adjusts to it, spacing his movements wider apart. The mistake is minor, but it changes the rhythm. He no longer expects quick answers from his body. He tightens the strap at last and leaves it there. His hands rest for a beat, then settle back into position. From now on, he moves with caution, allowing for the lag, letting the craft's motion set the pace. He lifts his head a few inches and feels a tight line pull from his shoulder up into his skull. The movement stops him. He lowers his head again, but the ache stays, a warm burn that doesn't release. Sweat cools at his collar where the strap rubs the skin raw. The craft rocks and the motion tugs at the same place, testing it. He tries once more, slower, barely raising his chin. The pain answers immediately. He angles his head to the side instead, careful to keep the strain from catching again. The low ceiling presses the choice on him. Ceiling ribs slide past his view. Faces turn toward the ramp, but he sees them only in parts, cheeks, helmet rims, mouth set and still. His neck settles into the lowered position and refuses to change. The limit feels fixed now. He stops testing it. He keeps his head down and lets the front of the craft arrive in fragments, holding that posture as the rocking continues. The straps bite into his ribs as the craft shifts, and he tightens against them without thought. His hands return to the same edges they have held before. Knees settle back into the same worn scuffs on the deck. The engine keeps its low pull, broken now and then by a dull jolt that moves through the hull and fades. He notices that he is no longer waiting to be told what happens next. He is only setting himself for it. Each sound arrives as a given. Each movement of the craft is taken in and absorbed. He holds, breathes, stays low. Those actions repeat and close the space where questions used to be. The fear is still there, steady across his chest, but it no longer demands attention. It sits alongside the motor noise, part of the background that must be carried. His sleeve stays damp at the wrist. The pressure does not lift. Another shift runs through the floor. His body answers it the same way it answered the last one. He keeps his position and lets the routine continue, prepared for whatever comes next without needing to name it. His tongue sticks to the roof of his mouth when he tries to swallow. He licks his lips and tastes salt mixed with oil. The skin there feels tight and cracked. He swallows again and feels nothing move, only a dry scrape down his throat. The air is thick with exhaust, and moisture beads on the metal nearby without reaching him. He shifts his jaw and tries to form a word. The mouth opens and closes once, then stops. The effort feels larger than it should. His chin stays tucked to his chest, canteens pressed somewhere out of reach in the crush of bodies. He lets the attempt go. His breathing shortens to match the dryness. He keeps his lips closed and draws air through his nose, accepting the limit. Speech drops away as an option. He stays quiet and holds his position as the craft continues to move. He draws a breath and tries to count it. The air scrapes his dry throat on the way in. 1. The chest rises in a small motion among other chests doing the same. The craft vibrates and the next breath comes before he is ready. 2, maybe. The motor swells and fills the space where the numbers should be. He starts again. In. Out. The vibration turns each inhale into effort, something that has to be pulled through. His diaphragm tightens and holds. The count slips away without warning, leaving only sound. He notices the loss and tries once more, slower this time. The structure does not hold. Noise pushes in and breaks it apart. He lets the numbers drop and keeps breathing anyway, small and steady, waiting for the next rise of the deck to carry him forward. The phrase returns without warning. Afraid to die. It surfaces as his cheek rests against the gritty paint, the strap edge pressing into his skin. He shifts his head a fraction and focuses on the deck, tracing a chipped line with his eyes. The thought fades for a moment, then comes back with the next pulse through the hull. He turns his attention to the sound instead, the steady motor and the dull interruptions riding on top of it. His hands tighten on the floor, fingers finding the same seam again. Boots stay planted inches from his face. The phrase returns anyway, unchanged. Each time it comes back, his stomach feels hollow, as if the space has been scooped clean. The effort to push it aside grows heavier than the thought itself. He stops trying to choose what stays in his mind. The noise rolls through again, and he lets the phrase sit there, waiting with him. The deck is cold under his chest. Damp fabric clings where his sleeve meets his wrist. His fingers rest against the paint, numb enough that he has to look to be sure they are still there. The motor's vibration moves through him in a steady layer, broken now and then by a dull shock that arrives without warning and passes just as quickly. He notices that there are fewer words inside his head. Not quiet, not relief, just space where commentary used to be. His body still reacts. It tightens when the hull jolts. It draws air in short pulls and lets it go. but the urge to explain what is happening drops away. The craft is no longer a situation. It is pressure, sound, cold, and motion happening all at once. A lightness floats behind his eyes, as if his focus has thinned. Recognition comes slower, but the body continues to work. He holds his position, breathing and bracing without instruction, aware only of the sensations as they arrive and move through him, wordless and ongoing. He shifts his knee to ease the pressure and the cramp snaps tight again, a sharp pull that stops the movement halfway. His palm slides on the wet paint, losing its hold for a split second before finding the seam again. The correction comes late. He feels it cost him a breath, short and clipped. The craft rocks and the small slip grows larger in his body than it should. His thigh stays locked, the muscle hard and unyielding. He holds still after that, aware of how narrow the margin has become. The mistake passes, but the space to recover feels thinner now. He lifts his head and catches a face for an instant, then only the rim of a helmet sliding past and a shoulder wrapped in wet fabric. Woolen rough canvas brush his cheek as the craft sways. He blinks, slow to close his eyes, and when he opens them the face is gone. Another man's mouth moves close by, but the sound doesn't reach him or doesn't separate from the engine. Names don't attach. He tries to hold one and can't. What registers instead is weight leaning in, heat through layers, the press of bodies sharing the same narrow space. Shoulders touch and separate with each roll. Helmets nearly knock and then drift apart again. The motion keeps faces coming and going without staying long enough to settle. His eyes burn and water. He lets them rest half closed. The crowd feels thicker without becoming familiar. Surrounded, he feels more alone than before, tracking only where bodies are, not who they belong to, as the craft continues to move. The craft tilts and his weight shifts before he can stop it. His shoulder meets another man's side and stays there. Wool presses against his forearm, damp and warm. The other body leans back in response, not looking, not speaking. Their balance settles between them as the deck rolls underfoot. Knees line up in a loose row, bending together like hinges. Several hands reach for the same rail, fingers finding space without comment. A foot slips and is corrected by the next shift, not by thought but by shared movement. The sway passes through them as one motion. Pressure builds in his shoulder joint where he leans, a dull ache that deepens with each tilt. He notices he is no longer bracing only against metal. The bodies around him have become part of the support. He accepts it and holds still, letting the next roll carry them both. Straps press across his chest as he shifts with the craft, the pressure warm and constant. His breath fogs inside the helmet and comes back to him hot. Around him, heads stay lowered. Hands remain fixed on the same rails and seams. No one speaks. The motor fills every gap and flattens any sound that might have formed into words. He notices the silence more than the noise. No one is announcing what they feel. The motion holds them all in place, rocking and settling without pause. His fear sits inside his ribs, contained and steady, like something carried rather than shared. Each shallow breath tightens the space a little more. The ramp ahead stays a dark line, unchanged. Distant impacts arrive and pass, spaced like marks in the sound. He realizes he could be inches from another man and still be alone with the thought of dying. The recognition settles and does not move. The craft rolls again. He adjusts his grip and keeps the fear where it is, private and held, as the noise continues. He shifts his arm to change the pressure and a dull throb answers from the shoulder. The strap edge bites where it crosses the joint, stiff fabric resisting the movement. He tries to roll the shoulder forward and finds no space. Another body presses in. A bench corner sits close to his elbow, stopping the motion halfway. The craft vibrates and the ache pulses with it, steady and deep. Each time he braces for the tilt, the joint tightens further. He pauses, then tests it again, smaller this time. The result is the same. The range is gone. The discomfort stays. He settles his arm back where it will hold. The pain does not ease, but it stops growing. He understands he cannot reset himself here. The shoulder will have to be carried as it is. He keeps his grip and lets the vibration pass through him, adjusting his posture to what remains possible. He grips the metal rail, releases it, then grips it again. The surface is cold and slick, familiar now. His fingers slide along the same edge and stop. He checks a strap by feel and lets it be. The craft tilts and he braces for it, knees pressing into the same scuffed paint. When the deck levels, he stays ready and braces again. The motions repeat without moving him anywhere. Grip. Hold. Ease. Set. His forearms begin to ache from the work, a low fatigue that spreads as he keeps the pattern going. The rocking forces small corrections, each one answered the same way as the last. There is no sense of forward change in it, only maintenance. His mind settles into the loop because it holds. The repetition gives him something solid to do. He does not look for variation. He returns his hands to the same places and waits for the next tilt, letting the sequence carry him through as the motion continues. The motor fades into a wide, dull layer of sound. It stays present but loses its edges. Voices nearby turn into movement without meaning, mouths opening and closing without separating from the noise. Helmet straps tremble with the vibration. What remains clear is the space where the thin sound might return. He listens for that alone. His jaw tightens until the muscles along his neck pull hard. The ringing in his ears sharpens, narrowing everything else. Each small change in the noise makes his body brace ahead of time, shoulders lifting before anything arrives. The anticipation moves faster than thought. Nothing happens, and the tension holds anyway. He cannot relax it on command. The reflex has set itself. His head stays angled, listening into the noise for the one sound that matters. Again, he thinks it's there. He waits, locked in place, letting the rest of the world fall away while he listens. Cold seeps through the cloth at his knees and spreads upward. Grit sticks to the damp fabric where it presses into the deck. His hands stay fixed on the same edges, fingers curled and unmoving. Knees are locked wide for balance. The dark line of the ramp holds steady ahead while the craft rocks beneath him. He searches for the earlier version of himself without lifting his head. The one who could imagine distance, who could think of control. Nothing answers. The fear sits where it has settled, constant and familiar. The vibration runs through his chest and keeps it tight. Even in the brief spaces between shocks, the body does not loosen. Another jolt arrives without pattern and passes. He remains braced. The deck stays cold. The posture holds on its own. He understands that even if the noise were to stop, this position would remain. Something has shifted past choice. He does not try to reach back for what is gone. He stays where he is, holding what remains, knowing he cannot go back. He tries to pull in a deeper breath and feels his throat close partway through. The air stops short and turns into a small, controlled draw instead. A tight strap presses at his neck as his chin stays tucked down. He waits a beat and tries again. The same limit answers him, firm and immediate. The air feels thick as it moves, mixed with motor haze. His chest barely rises under the gear, restricted by the position he's holding. The craft sways and interrupts the inhale, forcing him to start over. Each attempt ends the same way, cut off before it can fill him. A dull hunger for air settles in without release. He adjusts by breathing smaller, shorter, accepting what the body allows. The pattern forms quickly. He stops testing the boundary and stays within it, letting the shallow rhythm take over as the motion continues. The deck presses against him, cold and solid, but it feels slightly distant, as if another layer sits between his body and the paint. His damp sleeve sticks where it touches the floor. Grit still scratches when he shifts, yet the sensation arrives softened. His fingertips rest numb against the surface, holding by habit more than force. Bodies stay low around him, knees splayed wide to keep balance. The craft vibrates steadily, and small jolts pass through without startling him now. He notices his breathing the way he might notice someone else's short pulls, released without comment. The sound of it blends into the engine and disappears. A lightness sits behind his eyes, not relief, just distance. He does not test it. The motion continues and his body stays where it is, guided by repetition rather than choice. He holds the position and lets the rocking carry on, staying exactly where he is. He shifts his weight a little at a time, careful with the cramped leg. The muscle answers with a tight pull, then settles when he stops pushing it. His boot soles slide on the wet deck and find a steadier place. He adjusts his grip along the rail until his palm meets a rougher edge that will hold. The metal bites into the skin and stays there. He brings his feet into line beneath him, knees bent and ready. Shoulders stay tight in the crush of bodies, leaving no room to straighten. The craft rocks and the motion runs through his legs like a rehearsal. He lets it, using the sway to test balance without lifting. There is no question forming. Only position and timing. The leg still aches. The shoulder still throbs. He does not try to fix either. The body holds what it has learned and waits, set and quiet, ready to move when the cue finally comes. The strap presses across his ribs as the craft rocks, the pressure steady and familiar. His mouth stays dry. Grit clings to the skin along his sleeve where it rests on the deck. His hands remain fixed on the same edges, fingers curled and unmoving. Knees stay planted wide, holding the position without adjustment. The fear does not rise or fall anymore. It sits there, level and contained. He recognizes it the way he recognizes the weight on his chest or the pull in his leg. His body stays braced even in the brief moments when nothing happens. The tightness does not release between motions. It has become part of how he is held together. The ramp ahead remains a dark line. The motor hums and distant impacts arrive and pass, spaced and ordinary. The craft keeps moving forward. He moves with it, breathing short, posture set, carrying the admission without argument. Afraid to die. The thought no longer asks for attention. It stays with him as the rocking continues, quiet and unchanged. He becomes aware that his shoulders have been raised for a long time. When he tries to let them drop, the neck pulls hard and the shoulder answers with a dull throb. The stiff collar rubs the skin as he shifts, sweat cooling along his spine. The effort costs more than it gives back, and he stops halfway. He settles into the guarded position again, elbows tucked tight under the gear. The vibration keeps the muscles engaged, holding them where they are. The ache eases slightly once he stops resisting it. This shape hurts less than changing it. That becomes the measure. He tests the posture once more and abandons the attempt. The body has chosen its stance. He remains braced, shoulders lifted, neck tight, letting the motion continue. The position holds on its own now, carried forward without thought as the craft keeps moving.